The morning sun was just beginning to peek through the clouds when Dr. Amara Williams pulled into the parking lot of Riverside General Hospital. She sat in her car for a moment, taking a deep breath and looking at the massive building in front of her. This was it. Her first day as the new director of nursing. After 15 years of working her way up through the healthcare system, countless night shifts and more cups of terrible hospital coffee than she could count, she had finally made it to this position. But Amara had learned something important during her years in healthcare. You can't truly understand how a hospital runs by sitting in an office looking at reports and charts. You need to see it from the ground level, through the eyes of the people who matter most, the patients and their families. That's why she had decided to arrive early before her official introduction. She wasn't wearing the professional blazer and dress she had hanging in her car. Instead, she wore comfortable jeans and a simple navy blue blouse. Her hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail. She looked like any other person who might be visiting the hospital that morning. That was exactly the point. Amara grabbed her tablet and headed inside. The automatic doors whooshed open, and she was immediately hit with that familiar hospital smell, antiseptic mixed with something she could never quite identify. The emergency room waiting area was already busy, even at 7 in the morning. A young mother bounced a crying baby on her hip while trying to fill out paperwork. An elderly man sat hunched over, his hand wrapped in a blood-stained towel. A teenage boy slouched in his chair, earbuds in, his ankle propped up and swollen. She found an empty seat near the corner and sat down, opening her tablet. To anyone watching, she looked like she was scrolling through social media or checking emails. In reality, she was taking careful notes. She watched how the registration staff interacted with patients. She timed how long people waited before being called back. She observed which nurses seemed rushed and which ones took an extra moment to offer a reassuring smile. This was valuable information, the kind you couldn't get from official reports. About 45 minutes into her observation, Amara noticed a shift change happening. A group of nurses came through looking tired from their night shift. Another group arrived fresh and energized, ready to start their day. Among them was a woman in her late 40s with blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. Her scrubs were crisp and perfectly pressed, and she carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from years of experience. Or maybe it was something else, something that looked more like superiority. The nurse scanned the waiting room with sharp eyes like a hawk surveying its territory. Her gaze landed on Amara and lingered there longer than necessary. Amara noticed but didn't react. She simply continued typing notes on her tablet. A few minutes later, the blonde nurse approached. Her name tag read, Karen Mitchell, RN. She stopped directly in front of Amara, hands on her hips. "Excuse me," she said, her tone already carrying an edge. "This waiting area is for patients only. If you're not checking in, you need to move along." Amara looked up calmly and offered a polite smile. "I'm fine here, thank you. I'm just waiting for someone." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Waiting for who?" "All visitors need to check in at the desk first. That's hospital policy." "I appreciate you letting me know," Amara replied, keeping her voice even and pleasant. "But I'm all set. Thank you for checking, though." She returned her attention to her tablet, assuming the conversation was over. It wasn't. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to either check in properly or leave the premises," Karen said, her voice growing louder. A few people in the waiting room started to glance over. "We can't have people just hanging around here. This is a hospital, not a coffee shop." Amara took another deep breath. She had encountered people like this before in her career. People who made assumptions based on appearance. People who saw her brown skin and casual clothes and jumped to conclusions. She had hoped things might be different here, but apparently, some things never changed. "I understand your concern," Amara said, still maintaining her composure. "But I'm not causing any disturbance. I'm simply sitting here quietly." "That's not the point," Karen snapped. "You don't have a patient wristband. You haven't checked in. For all I know, you could be casing the place or bothering other patients. I've seen people like you before trying to take advantage of our facilities. People like you." Those 4 words hung in the air like a dark cloud. The young mother with the crying baby looked uncomfortable. The elderly man with the injured hand kept his eyes down. Everyone could feel the tension building. "I assure you I'm not taking advantage of anything," Amara said. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath now. "I have every right to be here." "Not without proper check-in, you don't," Karen retorted. She pulled out her phone. "If you won't leave voluntarily, I'll have to call security." Amara could have ended this right there. She could have pulled out her new employee badge from her bag. She could have explained who she was and watched the color drain from this nurse's face, but something stopped her. She wanted to see how far this would go. She wanted to understand exactly what kind of environment existed in this hospital, when authority figures thought no one important was watching. "If that's what you feel you need to do," Amara said quietly. "Then go ahead," Karen made the call. Within minutes, 2 security guards arrived. They looked confused when they saw the situation. A well-dressed woman sitting quietly with a tablet didn't exactly scream security threat. "This woman is refusing to check in properly and won't leave when asked," Karen explained to them, crossing her arms. "She's been loitering here for almost an hour." One of the security guards, an older man with kind eyes, looked at Amara. "Ma'am, is there a problem here? Do you need to register for treatment or visit someone?" Amara met his eyes. She could see he wasn't comfortable with this situation either. "There's no problem from my end," she said. "But if she insists I leave, I'll go." She stood up, collected her tablet, and walked toward the exit with quiet dignity. The security guards followed, looking apologetic. Karen watched with her arms still crossed, a satisfied look on her face. She had handled the situation. She had protected her hospital from what exactly? A woman sitting quietly in a waiting room? As Amara stepped out into the morning air, she heard Karen say to another nurse, "You have to stay on top of these things. People think they can just come in here and do whatever they want." The automatic doors closed behind her and Amara walked to her car. She sat inside for a moment, her hands gripping the steering wheel. She wasn't angry. She was disappointed. And more determined than ever, she checked her watch. It was 8:15. Her official introduction meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock. She had just enough time to change into her professional clothes, touch up her makeup, and prepare herself for what was about to happen. Amara pulled out the blazer and dress from the back seat. Navy blue, perfectly tailored, with her new employee badge already attached. Director of Nursing. As she changed in the car, she thought about Karen Mitchell. The nurse had no idea what was coming. In less than an hour, she would stand on that stage in the hospital conference room. She would be introduced to all the department heads and senior staff. And Karen Mitchell would be sitting in that audience. Amara looked at herself in the rearview mirror, straightening her collar. She had spent her entire career proving herself, working twice as hard to get half the recognition. She had dealt with people like Karen at every step of her journey. But now, for the first time, she would be the one in charge. She would be the one with the power to change things. She grabbed her professional briefcase, locked her car, and walked back toward the hospital entrance. This time, she held her head a little higher. The real work was about to begin. The hospital conference room was filling up fast. Department heads, senior nurses, administrators, and key staff members filed in, chatting amongst themselves as they grabbed coffee and pastries from the table at the back. Everyone knew what this meeting was about. The new director of nursing was finally being introduced after weeks of speculation and rumors. Karen Mitchell walked in with 2 of her colleagues, Linda and Patricia. They had worked together for years and had formed a tight circle. The kind of circle that thrived on hospital gossip and complaints about administration. "I'm telling you, my morning was already ridiculous," Karen said as they settled into seats near the middle of the room.
"Had to deal with some woman who thought she could just camp out in the ER waiting room like it was a public library." "What do you mean?"
Linda asked, stirring cream into her coffee. She was just sitting there with her tablet, not checking in, not seeing anyone. "Just taking up space for over an hour," Karen explained, shaking her head. "When I asked her to leave, she got all defensive about it. Had this attitude like the rules didn't apply to her." Patricia leaned in, always hungry for drama. "What happened?" "I had to call security to escort her out," Karen said with a satisfied shrug. "I mean, we can't just let random people wander around the hospital. There are policies for a reason." "Good for you," Linda said. "People think they can do whatever they want these days." "Exactly," Karen agreed. And she had this look on her face, you know? Like she was judging everything and everyone. Made me uncomfortable. You have to trust your instincts in this job. What Karen didn't mention was exactly what those instincts were based on. She didn't say that the woman had been well-dressed and quiet. She didn't mention that there had been other people in the waiting room who had been there just as long, but she hadn't questioned them. Deep down, in a place she didn't like to examine too closely, Karen knew her reaction had been about more than hospital policy. The lights dimmed slightly, and the conversations died down. Hospital CEO Dr. Robert Chen walked to the podium at the front of the room. He was a tall man with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses, known for being fair but firm. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice carrying easily through the room. "Thank you all for being here. I know you're busy, so I'll get right to the point. As you know, we've been searching for a new director of nursing for the past 3 months. This position is crucial to our hospital's success. We needed someone exceptional. Someone with not just experience and credentials, but vision and integrity." Karen half listened, already thinking about the mountain of paperwork waiting for her after this meeting. New directors were all the same. They came in with big ideas, made everyone's life harder for a few months, then settled into the routine. She'd seen it a dozen times. After an extensive search and interview process, Dr. Chen continued, "We found the perfect candidate. She comes to us with 15 years of experience in nursing, including roles in critical care, emergency medicine, and hospital administration." A few people nodded approvingly. 15 years was solid experience. She holds a doctorate in nursing practice from Johns Hopkins University, has published research on patient care improvements, and has received numerous awards for excellence in healthcare management. Now people were murmuring with interest. Those were impressive credentials. Most importantly, Dr. Chen said, pausing for effect, she has a proven track record of transforming hospital cultures, improving patient satisfaction scores, and creating environments where both staff and patients feel valued and respected. Karen rolled her eyes slightly. That last part always sounded nice in speeches, but rarely translated to real change. "Please join me in welcoming Riverside General Hospital's new director of nursing, Dr. Amara Williams." The room erupted in polite applause. Karen clapped along automatically, her eyes on the side door where the new director would enter. The door opened. Karen's hands froze mid-clap. Walking across the stage in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit was the woman from the waiting room, the woman she had accused of loitering, the woman she had called security on, the woman she had kicked out of the hospital less than 2 hours ago. The blood drained from Karen's face. Her mouth went dry. She felt Linda nudge her, asking if she was okay, but Karen couldn't respond. She couldn't move. She could barely breathe. This couldn't be happening. This had to be a mistake. Maybe it was someone who just looked similar. But no. As the woman stepped into the light and smiled at the audience, there was no doubt. It was her. Same face, same calm expression, same composed demeanor. Dr. Amara Williams took the podium, shaking Dr. Chen's hand and thanking him. Her voice was clear and confident. "Thank you, Dr. Chen, and thank you all for this warm welcome," Amara began. "I'm honored to join the Riverside General family. I've spent the last few weeks researching this hospital, and I'm impressed by what I've seen. But I believe we can do even better." Karen's mind was racing. Did she know? Had she recognized Karen? Of course she had. How could she not? And the security footage. Oh God, the security footage. Everything was recorded in the ER. Every word Karen had said, every accusation she had made, it was all on camera. "My philosophy is simple," Amara continued. "Great healthcare starts with respect. Respect for patients, respect for families, and respect among staff. Every person who walks through our doors deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of who they are or what they look like." Those last words seemed to hang in the air. Karen felt like they were directed right at her, even though Amara's eyes swept across the entire audience evenly. "I believe in leading by example," Amara said, "which is why I arrived early this morning to observe our emergency room operations from a patient's perspective. I wanted to see how we treat people when we think no one important is watching." Karen's stomach dropped. She felt Patricia and Linda both turn to look at her. They knew. They had just been talking about it. "What I saw was mostly positive," Amara continued. "Dedicated nurses working hard under difficult conditions, registration staff managing a busy morning with patients. But I also saw some areas where we need to improve, some gaps in how we approach each person who comes to us for care." The room was silent now. Everyone was listening intently. "Over the coming weeks, I'll be spending time in every department," Amara said, "getting to know each of you, understanding your challenges, and working together to build an even better hospital. My door will always be open. I believe in transparency and communication." She paused, and for just a moment her eyes found Karen in the audience. It was brief, maybe 2 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. There was no anger in that gaze. No judgment. Just acknowledgement. A silent confirmation that yes, she knew exactly who Karen was and what had happened. Then Amara's eyes moved on, and she smiled warmly at the rest of the room. I'm excited to work with all of you, she concluded. Together, we're going to make Riverside General a place where everyone, staff and patients alike, feels valued and respected. Thank you. The applause was genuine and enthusiastic. People were impressed. Several department heads nodded approvingly. This new director seemed like she meant business, but Karen couldn't clap. Her hands felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. As people stood up and began mingling, introducing themselves to Dr. Williams, Karen stayed frozen in her seat. Karen, Linda whispered urgently. That's the woman you were talking about, isn't it? The one from the ER? Karen nodded slowly, unable to speak. Oh my God, Patricia breathed. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What could she do? Apologize? Pretend it never happened? Resign before she got fired? She watched as Dr. Williams moved through the crowd, shaking hands and smiling. She was gracious with everyone, asking questions about their roles, genuinely interested in their answers. She looked every bit the professional leader. Nothing like the woman Karen had treated so poorly just hours before. Several people approached Karen, asking if she was feeling well. She mumbled something about not feeling great, about maybe coming down with something. It wasn't entirely a lie. She did feel sick. Sick with dread and the slowly dawning realization of just how badly she had messed up. As the meeting broke up and people headed back to their departments, Karen slipped out quickly, avoiding eye contact with everyone. She needed to think. She needed to figure out what to do. But deep down she already knew the truth. There was nothing she could do. The damage was done. And now she would have to face the consequences. She just had no idea how severe those consequences would be. The next few days were torture for Karen. She found herself taking the long way around the hospital to avoid certain hallways. She volunteered for the least desirable shifts, hoping Dr. Williams wouldn't be doing rounds at 3 in the morning. She even started eating lunch in her car instead of the cafeteria, just to minimize the chances of an encounter. But Riverside General wasn't that big. And Dr. Williams seemed to be everywhere. On Tuesday morning, Karen was at the nurse's station updating patient charts when she heard that familiar voice down the hall. Her heart jumped into her throat. She quickly gathered her papers and tried to slip away, but Dr. Williams rounded the corner before she could escape. Good morning, Amara said pleasantly to the group of nurses at the station. Her eyes swept over everyone, including Karen, with the same professional warmth. How's the morning going so far? The other nurses responded enthusiastically, excited to interact with their new director. Karen mumbled something inaudible and stared intensely at her paperwork, praying to become invisible. I'm doing rounds this week, getting familiar with each department, Amara continued. I'll be sitting in on some patient interactions, just observing. Nothing to worry about. I want to understand how we work so I can better support you all. After she left, one of the younger nurses, Rebecca, turned to Karen. She seems really nice, don't you think? Not like the last director who barely left his office. Karen forced a tight smile. Sure, nice, but nice was the problem, wasn't it? If Dr. Williams had screamed at her or publicly humiliated her after the waiting room incident, it would almost be easier. Karen would know where she stood. Instead, there was this professional courtesy, this polite acknowledgement that somehow felt worse. It was the uncertainty that was killing her. That afternoon, Karen overheard 2 security guards talking near the staff elevator. You remember that woman from Monday morning? One asked. The one Nurse Mitchell had us escort out? Karen's blood ran cold. She pretended to check her phone, but her ears were straining to hear every word. Oh yeah, the other guard laughed. Turns out that was the new director of nursing. Can you believe it? The whole thing's on the security footage. Management reviewed it and everything. Man, I felt bad about that. She wasn't doing anything wrong. Just sitting there quiet as could be, right? I mean, we have to respond when nurses call us, but that whole situation felt off. They moved away, their conversation fading. Karen stood frozen, her phone shaking in her hand. The security footage. Of course there was footage. How could she have been so stupid? And management had reviewed it. That meant Dr. Chen had probably seen it. Human Resources had probably seen it. Everyone knew. She made it to the bathroom before the tears came. Locked in a stall, she tried to calm her breathing. This was bad. This was really bad. She had been with this hospital for 12 years. She had seniority, good performance reviews, connections. But none of that would matter if the new director wanted her gone. Over the next few days, Karen noticed other changes. Linda and Patricia, her usual lunch companions, suddenly had convenient excuses. They were busy with patients or had errands to run, or had brought lunch from home. The comfortable camaraderie they'd shared seemed to evaporate overnight. She caught them whispering once and knew immediately they were talking about her. When she approached, they went quiet and gave her awkward smiles before making excuses to leave. Even worse, she started noticing how other staff members looked at her. There were quick glances followed by turned heads. Conversations that stopped when she entered a room. She had become the subject of hospital gossip and she hated it. The stress was affecting her work. On Wednesday, she mixed up medication orders for 2 patients and had to be corrected by another nurse. On Thursday, she snapped at a medical resident who asked a simple question, then had to apologize. On Friday, she forgot to log important vitals for a patient and it was only caught during the next shift's review. These weren't like her. Karen had always prided herself on being detail-oriented and professional. But now she couldn't focus. Every time her mind wandered, it went back to that morning in the ER, to the look on Dr. Williams' face when Karen had called security, to the quiet dignity with which she had left. And worse, her mind went to all the other times she had made similar snap judgments. The patient's family member she had asked to leave because they looked suspicious. The young man she had assumed was trying to steal hospital supplies when he was just lost, looking for his grandmother's room. The couple she had directed to the county hospital instead, suggesting it might be more their speed. When had she become this person? When had she started seeing threats instead of people? On Friday afternoon, Karen was working in the cardiac care unit when Dr. Williams appeared for her rounds. Karen's stomach twisted, but there was nowhere to hide. She had 3 patients to check on, and Dr. Williams had settled into a chair near the nurse's station with a clipboard. Clearly planning to observe for a while, Karen went about her duties, hyper-aware of being watched. She checked vitals, adjusted IV drips, and chatted with patients, all while feeling those observant eyes on her. Then Mrs. Chen, an elderly Chinese woman recovering from a heart procedure, asked Karen a question in heavily accented English. Karen had to ask her to repeat it twice, and her frustration leaked through in her tone. "The bathroom," Mrs. Chen said again, slower. "I need help to bathroom." "You just went an hour ago," Karen said, her voice sharper than it should have been. "You need to wait. The doctor doesn't want you walking around too much yet." "But I heard you," Karen interrupted. "You need to be patient. I have other people to take care of." She walked away, missing the hurt look on Mrs. Chen's face. But Dr. Williams didn't miss it. Karen saw her make a note on her clipboard. An hour later, Karen watched from a distance as Dr. Williams personally helped Mrs. Chen to the bathroom, taking her time, speaking slowly and clearly, making sure the elderly woman felt heard and cared for. The contrast couldn't have been more obvious. More notes on the clipboard. That evening, as Karen's shift ended, she saw Dr. Williams talking with some of the other nurses in the break room. They were laughing about something relaxed and comfortable. None of them looked stressed or worried. None of them had ruined their careers in a single moment of prejudice. Karen grabbed her bag and left quickly, but not before hearing one of the nurses say, "She really listens, you know. Like actually listens. We haven't had that in a while." The weekend was worse. Karen couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. She replayed the waiting room incident over and over in her mind, each time feeling worse about it. She thought about calling in sick on Monday. Maybe she could claim a family emergency and take some time off. Give this whole thing time to blow over. But would it blow over? Or was she just delaying the inevitable? Sunday evening, her personal email pinged. Her heart sank when she saw the sender, Riverside General Hospital Human Resources. With shaking hands, she opened it. "Dear Ms. Mitchell, Dr. Amara Williams has requested a meeting with you on Monday, October 27th at 2 p.m. in her office. Please confirm your attendance. This meeting is mandatory. Sincerely, Human Resources Department." Karen read it 3 times. Mandatory meeting. In the director's office. This was it. This was when she would be fired. 12 years of service gone, and she would deserve it. She knew she would deserve it. She typed a brief confirmation and hit send. Then she sat on her couch in the dark, staring at nothing. wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. The truth was, it hadn't fallen apart quickly. It had been falling apart for years, piece by piece, every time she had let her biases guide her actions instead of her training. Every time she had made assumptions about people based on how they looked rather than who they were. She had just been lucky enough that no one with power had noticed. Until now. Monday morning arrived too soon. Karen went through her shift in a daze, watching the clock tick closer to 2 o'clock. Other nurses asked if she was okay. She lied and said she was fine. At 1:50, she stood outside Dr. Williams's office. The door had a nameplate now, freshly installed. Dr. Amara Williams, Director of Nursing. Karen raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. Maybe she should just resign. Write a quick letter and leave it under the door. Save them both the awkwardness of this conversation. But before she could decide, the door opened. Dr. Williams stood there, professional and composed as always. "Karen," she said. "Come in, we need to talk." Karen stepped into the office, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. The room was simple but professional. A desk with a computer, some chairs, and a small bookshelf filled with medical journals and nursing textbooks. On the wall hung Amara's credentials. Johns Hopkins. Multiple certifications. Awards for excellence in patient care. "Please sit down," Amara said, closing the door behind them. Karen sat in the chair across from the desk, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She felt like a child called to the principal's office. Amara didn't sit immediately. Instead, she moved to a small coffee maker on the side table. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked. The question caught Karen off guard. No, thank you." Amara poured herself a cup and finally sat down behind her desk. She took a sip, then set the cup aside. For a long moment, she just looked at Karen, not with anger, but with something that looked like disappointment mixed with curiosity. "Do you know why you're here?" Amara asked finally. Karen's voice came out as barely a whisper. "The waiting room." "Last Monday. That's part of it," Amara said. She turned her computer monitor so Karen could see it. On the screen was a paused security video. Karen recognized the ER waiting area immediately, and there she was, standing over Amara, her body language aggressive, her finger pointing. Amara pressed play. Karen watched herself on screen. Heard her own voice saying, "We can't have people just hanging around here." Watched herself make the call to security. Saw the calm dignity with which Amara had gathered her things and left. It was worse than Karen had imagined. On screen, she looked exactly like what she was. A bully with a badge of authority. Amara paused the video. "This was my first impression of Riverside General Hospital. This was what I saw when I tried to observe how we treat people. Can you understand why that concerns me?" Karen couldn't speak. Her throat felt tight. Amara opened a folder on her desk. "But I'm a thorough person. I don't make decisions based on one incident. So I've spent the last week and a half observing, talking to staff, reviewing records." She pulled out several papers. "These are patient complaints filed over the past 18 months. She laid them out on the desk where Karen could see them. There were more than Karen expected. Her name appeared on multiple forms. "This one is from last December," Amara said, pointing to one. "The Rodriguez family. They complained that you repeatedly mispronounced their last name even after they corrected you, and that you suggested they might be more comfortable at a different hospital, one that served their community better." Karen felt her face burn with shame. She remembered that. She had told herself she was just trying to be helpful. "This one is from March," Amara continued. "A young black man named Terrell came to visit his sister after her surgery. You stopped him in the hallway and demanded to know what he was doing there. When he explained, you insisted on verifying his story with the patient before you'd let him continue. 3 other family members had walked past you that same hour without being questioned." "I was just being careful," Karen said weakly. "There had been some thefts. Were those other 3 family members not subject to the same theft concerns?" Amara asked pointedly. "Or did they just look more trustworthy to you?" Karen had no answer. Amara pulled out another document. "This is from 2 weeks ago. Before I even started, the Patel family. You asked if they spoke English before even attempting to communicate with them. They're 3rd-generation Americans from Ohio." She spread out more papers, each one a damning piece of evidence. A pattern of behavior that Karen could no longer deny or excuse. "And then there's what I observed personally this past week," Amara said, her voice still calm but firm. "Mrs. Chen needed help to the bathroom. You were irritated by her accent and dismissed her needs. I watched you give more patience and time to other patients who communicated more easily. I was having a bad day, Karen said, the excuse sounding hollow even to her own ears. We all have bad days, Amara replied, but our bad days don't seem to disproportionately affect people who look different from us. That's not stress, Karen, that's bias. The word hung in the air between them. Bias. Karen wanted to argue to defend herself, but how could she? The evidence was right there in front of her. I'm not a bad person, Karen said, her voice cracking. I've been a nurse for 20 years. I've helped thousands of patients. I've saved lives. I don't think you're a bad person, Amara said, and her tone softened slightly. I think you're a person who has let biases go unchecked for so long that they've become automatic. You probably don't even realize you're doing it half the time. Karen felt tears building behind her eyes. So you're firing me. That's one option, Amara said. She leaned back in her chair. Here's the situation. What you did to me in that waiting room was unprofessional and discriminatory. What these complaints show is that it wasn't an isolated incident. As director of nursing, I have a responsibility to every patient and every staff member in this hospital. I have to ensure that everyone is treated with dignity and respect. She paused, letting that sink in. If I fire you, this problem doesn't go away. You'll go to another hospital, probably with a decent reference because of your years of service here, and you'll continue treating people the same way. Nothing changes. You don't learn. The next hospital's patients suffer, and frankly, firing you would be the easy solution for me. Clean and simple. Karen looked up confused. What's the other option? Amara pulled out another document. This is a formal disciplinary action. It includes several components. First, a written warning that goes in your permanent file. Second, you'll be required to complete a comprehensive bias training program, not the standard 2-hour online course we make everyone do. A real program led by professionals that takes several weeks, she continued. Third, you'll be placed on probationary status for 6 months. During that time, your patient interactions will be monitored. You'll receive regular feedback. You'll meet with me monthly to discuss your progress. Fourth, you'll be required to work alongside nurses from different backgrounds, including the ones you've had issues with, so you can see firsthand the excellent care they provide. Karen listened, her mind trying to process it all. If you complete these requirements successfully and show genuine improvement, you keep your job, Amara said. If you fail to complete them, or if there are any further complaints about discriminatory behavior, you're terminated immediately. No second chances, and if I refuse, Karen asked quietly, then you resign effective immediately. I'll give you a neutral reference that confirms your employment dates and nothing more. You walk away and we both move on. Amara folded her hands on the desk. But I want to be clear about something, Karen. This isn't about punishment. This is about change. Real change. I'm offering you an opportunity that a lot of people in your position don't get. The opportunity to confront your biases, understand their impact, and become better. Why? Karen asked. Why would you do that for me after what I did to you? Amara was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Because I've seen good nurses turn into great nurses when they were willing to do the hard work of examining themselves. Because I believe people can change if they want to, and because firing you doesn't fix the underlying problem in this hospital, but helping you change might. She leaned forward. I won't lie to you. This won't be easy. The bias training will be uncomfortable. You'll have to confront some hard truths about yourself. Your colleagues will know you're on probation. Some of them won't trust you. You'll have to earn back their respect and the respect of your patients. But, she continued, if you're willing to put in the work, genuinely willing, then I'm willing to give you this chance. Not because you deserve it, but because the patients deserve a nurse who's learned to treat everyone with equal care and respect. Karen sat there, feeling the weight of the decision. Part of her wanted to just resign and walk away, avoid the humiliation, the hard work, the constant monitoring, start fresh somewhere else, but deep down she knew that wouldn't solve anything. She would just be the same person making the same mistakes in a different building. I need to think about it, Karen said. You have until Monday morning, Amara replied. Come to my office at 8 a.m. with your decision. If you choose the disciplinary action, bring a signed agreement. If you choose to resign, bring a resignation letter. Either way, we need this resolved. She stood up, indicating the meeting was over. Karen stood as well, her legs shaky. As Karen reached the door, Amara spoke one more time. Karen, I'm not your enemy. I'm actually trying to help you. I hope you can see that. Karen nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and left the office. As she walked down the hallway, she felt like she was seeing the hospital differently. She noticed the diverse faces of staff and patients, heard different languages being spoken, saw families of all backgrounds waiting anxiously for news about their loved ones. When had she stopped seeing people and started seeing categories? When had she let fear and assumptions replace compassion? She had the weekend to decide. 2 days to determine the course of the rest of her career and, honestly, the rest of her life. Because whatever she chose, she knew she couldn't go back to being the person she was before. That person had been exposed, and there was no hiding anymore. The only question was whether she had the courage to change. Karen spent the entire weekend in her apartment, barely leaving the couch. Her sister called twice. She let it go to voicemail. She knew if she talked to anyone, she'd have to explain what happened, and she wasn't ready for that conversation yet. Saturday night, she pulled out a notebook and started writing. On one side of the page, she wrote resign. On the other, stay and change. Under each heading, she listed reasons. Resign. Avoid embarrassment, start fresh somewhere new. Escape the judgment. Stay and change. Keep her job, actually learn something. Stop running from her problems. The resign list was shorter, but each reason felt easier. The stay list was longer, but each reason felt harder. She thought about her 20 years in nursing. The patients she had helped. The lives she had touched. But now she also thought about the patients she had failed. The ones she had made feel unwelcome or uncomfortable. The ones who had walked away from an interaction with her feeling smaller than when they arrived. How many had there been that she didn't even know about? How many people had she hurt without realizing it? Sunday morning, Karen drove to a coffee shop across town where she wouldn't run into anyone from the hospital. She sat by the window and watched people pass by. A young black couple pushing a stroller, laughing about something, an elderly Asian man walking his dog, a Hispanic family, kids running ahead while the parents walked behind, calling after them. She realized she was doing it again. Categorizing people by what they looked like instead of just seeing them as people living their lives. When had this started? She thought back to her childhood, her parents, the neighborhood she grew up in. The subtle messages she had absorbed about who belonged where and who to be careful around. Messages she had never questioned because they felt normal, but normal didn't mean right. Monday morning arrived. Karen woke up at 5 a.m., even though she didn't need to be at the hospital until 8. She showered, put on her best scrubs, and stood in front of the mirror for a long time. You can do this, she told her reflection. It's going to be hard, but you can do this. She had made her decision. At 7:45, Karen walked into Riverside General with a signed copy of the disciplinary agreement in her bag. Her hands were shaking as she rode the elevator to Amara's office. She knocked at exactly 8 o'clock. Come in, Amara's voice called. Karen entered and placed the signed document on the desk. I want to stay. I want to change. Amara looked at the paper, then at Karen. This won't be easy. I know, Karen said, but running away won't fix anything. I've been running from this my whole life without even realizing it. I'm tired of running, Amara nodded slowly. Okay, then let's get started. The bias training began the following week. It wasn't what Karen expected. She thought it would be lectures about what not to say and what not to do. Instead, it was hours of uncomfortable self-reflection. The facilitator, a woman named Dr. Joyce Henderson, asked questions that made Karen squirm. Think about a time you crossed the street to avoid someone. What did that person look like? Think about a time you clutched your purse tighter. Think about a time you made an assumption about someone's education or background before they even spoke. Karen had to confront memory after memory of small moments that revealed her biases. It was exhausting and painful. More than once she wanted to walk out. But she stayed. Dr. Henderson explained how bias works in the brain. It's not about being a bad person. Your brain is trying to keep you safe by categorizing things quickly. But those categories are based on what society has taught you, not on reality. The work is recognizing when your brain is making those quick judgments and questioning them. Karen started practicing in her daily life. When she caught herself making an assumption, she would stop and ask herself why. Where did that thought come from? Was it based on anything real or just on learned patterns? At the hospital, her probation meant constant supervision. Another nurse was assigned to work with her, a young black woman named Destiny who had been with Riverside for 3 years. Karen knew Destiny had heard about what happened. The first day they worked together was awkward and tense, but Destiny was an incredible nurse. Karen watched her calm down a panicking patient with just her voice and presence, watched her catch a medication error that could have been serious, watched her spend an extra 15 minutes explaining post-care instructions to an elderly patient who needed things repeated several times. "You're really good at this," Karen said during their lunch break. Destiny looked surprised. "Thanks. I love what I do." "How long did it take you to get this comfortable with patients?" "I'm still learning," Destiny admitted. "Every patient is different. Every day teaches me something new." They started talking more after that. About nursing, about challenges, about difficult patients and difficult doctors. Karen learned that Destiny had wanted to be a nurse since she was 8 years old, when a nurse had taken care of her grandmother during her final days. "She made my grandma feel like she mattered," Destiny said. "Like even though she was dying, she was still a person who deserved dignity and kindness. That's what I want to give people." It hit Karen hard. That's what nursing was supposed to be about. And somewhere along the way, she had forgotten. Over the following months, Karen worked alongside nurses from different backgrounds. She learned about their lives, their families, their reasons for being in healthcare. She discovered that Raphael, who she had always thought was quiet, actually had an amazing sense of humor once you got to know him. That Aisha, who she had assumed was intimidating, was actually just confident and really good at her job. The monthly meetings with Dr. Williams were tough but fair. Amara would review patient feedback, discuss specific interactions, and ask Karen to reflect on her progress. "You're improving," Amara said during their third meeting. "But you still have moments where you revert. Last week with the Johnson family." "What happened there?" Karen sighed. "The father had tattoos and looked rough. I automatically assumed he might be aggressive. I was defensive before he even spoke." "And was he aggressive?" "No, he was actually really gentle with his daughter. He was just a concerned dad." "So what did you learn?" "That my first assumption was wrong. That I need to give people a chance before I judge them." By month 4, something shifted. Karen wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was genuinely seeing patients differently. A young man in baggy clothes wasn't a potential threat. He was someone's son who was scared about his test results. A family speaking Spanish in the hallway wasn't making things difficult. They were processing difficult news in the language they were most comfortable with. Meanwhile, Dr. Williams had been implementing changes throughout the hospital. Mandatory bias training became part of onboarding for all new staff. A confidential reporting system was established for anyone who experienced discrimination. Patient satisfaction surveys included specific questions about feeling respected and heard. The hospital began partnering with community organizations to better serve diverse populations. Translators were made more readily available. Cultural sensitivity became part of every department meeting. The changes weren't just cosmetic. They were real and measurable. Patient complaints about discrimination dropped significantly. Staff retention improved, especially among minority nurses who had previously felt unsupported. The hospital's reputation in the community began to change. 6 months after that difficult meeting in Amara's office, there was a hospital-wide staff meeting. Dr. Chen announced that Riverside General had received an award for excellence in patient care and community relations. The entire staff applauded. After the meeting, Amara approached Karen in the hallway. "I want to show you something." She pulled up a patient satisfaction survey on her tablet. It was from the family Karen had helped last week, the Nguyens. The feedback was glowing. "The nurse took time to understand our concerns. She was patient with my mother, who doesn't speak English well. She made us feel like we mattered." Karen felt tears in her eyes. "I almost gave up so many times during these past 6 months." "But you didn't," Amara said. "That's what matters. You did the hard work." "I'm not the same person I was," Karen said quietly. "I look back at who I was and I'm ashamed. But I'm also grateful, because if you hadn't called me out, if you had just fired me, I would never have changed. I would have kept hurting people without even knowing it." "People can change when they're willing to be uncomfortable," Amara said. "You were willing. Not everyone is." A few weeks later, during a team meeting, Karen found herself speaking up. Another nurse had made a comment about a patient that sounded dismissive. Instead of staying quiet like she once would have, Karen addressed it. "I don't think that's fair," she said. We don't know their situation. Everyone who comes here deserves our respect. The nurse looked surprised but nodded. You're right. I'm sorry. After the meeting, Destiny caught up with Karen. I heard what you said in there. That took courage. I learned from the best, Karen said, and she meant it. Change didn't happen overnight. Karen still caught herself sometimes, still had to actively work against old patterns, but now she had the tools to recognize it and correct it. Now she understood that being a good nurse meant treating every single patient like they mattered, regardless of what they looked like or where they came from. Riverside General wasn't perfect. No hospital is. But it was better. And Karen was better. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we need most. Sometimes being called out isn't punishment, it's a gift. A chance to become who we should have been all along. And sometimes the person who holds up the mirror is exactly who we needed to meet.